Starting with version 1.5.2, SkyTrack now has a feature called Identify Satellite. So given an approximate range of times, approximate location, specified field of view, it'll list any satellites that are expected to come through that field of view. I got the idea to create this when one night I was doing a live view through my telescope and I saw this random satellite come through the field of view and did an extremely bright flash. I had never seen anything like it before. Fortunately, I wasn't videoing or capturing video at the time, but I realized it'd be nice to have a feature to be able to attempt to identify what satellite that would have been. So to give an example, last night I was doing some imaging on Dumbbell Nebula from 1919 to 1927, so imaging till 1928. And so I'll set my range of times. That was the dumbbell. And I was using my Celestron C8 at full focal length, so it's a pretty narrow field of view. And I only want to look at satellites that are sunlit. If they're eclipsed and near a shadow, they're not going to show up on an image as a streak. And according to this, at 1926, this satellite came through, and there were no other satellites coming through at that time. Before I did this, I did load the TLE file called Active Satellites, which has 4,800 satellites. So most of the active satellites, not all satellites are going to be in here because not all satellites are registered. The UN does a registry of satellites, but not all are registered. For instance, some secret military satellites, spy satellites, aren't going to be registered. So going back here then, I would expect none of these subs to have a satellite streak through, except for this one starting at 1926. So if we go through, we can see everything's clear, and then sure enough at 1926, there's a satellite streak. It's not very bright because I was shooting at, again, full focal length on my C8, so at f10. So at f10, a satellite coming through is going to be a very faint line. I normally wouldn't worry about a sub like this. I would just include it because when I stack all my subs, this is going to get averaged out. You're not going to see it. So that was the satellite that came through at that time. Now let's say I'm planning my imaging for tonight, and I'm going to set this to astronomical dusk. Astronomical dusk is when the sun is at minus 18 degrees elevation, so it's good and dark for imaging. And I'm going to, I did cherry pick this one ahead of time, but it gives a good example of how this could be used. So this yellow line shows when the moon is up, so I only have a small amount of time here from astronomical dusk till the moon is up to do imaging. Normally I wouldn't image something this low in the sky, but again, I'm just choosing this one to demonstrate how this feature could possibly be used. So from astronomical dusk to about 9 o'clock, what satellites could interfere with our imaging? So that was tonight, astronomical dusk, and I said to about 9 o'clock, 2100, and it was this nebula, and I'm just gonna make this a little wider field of view. Oh no, let's leave it at narrow field of view even, and we're only interested in satellites that are sunlit, that are going to cause streaks in our images. So do a find. And you can see we got a lot of satellites, mainly Starlinks, coming through, all sunlit from astronomical dusk to about 15 minutes later. So if I was going to image that object, I might go in here first and just have a look at this, and I could see, well, this is going to be frustrating if I'm taking 5-minute subs. I'm going to have, well, here there's, almost 3 satellites coming through in 5 minutes, and here there is 4 satellites, 5 satellites coming, 4 satellites coming through in 5 minutes. So if I saw this ahead of time, I might not start imaging until after this one comes through, because this will just be frustrating having that many streaks coming through. So that's one possible use for it. Identifying a satellite that you did see in a sub, or doing some planning around when you want to start imaging if you're concerned about satellite streaks coming through your sub images. Just for interest, let's broaden our field of view a little bit and go until the early hours of the next day. I'm going to look at all satellites, whether they're sunlit or not, and let's just look at Starlink. And I think these results will surprise no one. So through this, field of view the entire night, we're going to have 88 Starlink satellites come through our field of view. But again, of course, the only ones that really matter are ones that are sunlit. So you can see after about 6:45, everything else is eclipsed. It's not going to affect imaging. But you can see how many Starlinks are up there. The other interesting thing this may be used for is if you do see a streak, a satellite streak through your image, you come in here, you've chosen this big file with all the active registered satellites in it, and you have a streak but you don't see a satellite at that time, then it possibly could be an unregistered military type of satellite. Anyway, I hope you find this feature maybe useful planning your imaging, or for its intended purpose of trying to identify a random satellite you might have seen